government, central and state, urged companies when announcing the lockdown not to cut jobs and not to cut pay. The urge was that please support your employees through these tough times. But the fact is that for a number of companies, revenues have pretty much just frozen. And I'm talking about big companies here. We'll come to the smaller companies in a bit. So we've had a spate of companies announce pay cuts recently, most of them from the aviation sector, of course, expectedly many from the hospitality sector as well. But we don't even have a number yet to how many are being impacted in the informal sector. While we talk about what next after COVID-19, we're going to have to look at a possibility of a lot more pay cuts and job losses in an economy where unemployment was already a problem. So what's the road forward and what do we expect to happen? Which are the sectors which could be worst hit? To speak on this, I'm joined today by Manish Sabharwal, Siddhartha Sanyal and K Ganes. Welcome to all of you and thank you for speaking with us today on the show. Let me begin with K Ganesh. Just to get a sense of how business owners are feeling and dealing with this right now. The message was please support your employees. Many are still doing that. How long do you think they can manage to, considering there has been no clear wage support from the government so far?
Yeah, so as far as March is concerned, fortunately, the first part of March did not see that much impact. So if you look at actually the March numbers and January, February, March quarter numbers for most of the companies, be it corporate, be it SMEs, be it startups, the variance was not that drastic because it's only the last 2 weeks that get a real hit. But that actually tells only part of the story. Entering the March, or if you take the last 2 weeks run rate, it's a very dismal story. So as you rightly said, Tamnna, you cannot have a request for keeping the employees, don't do job cuts, don't reduce salary, implemented unless it is supported with some stimulus, some package, some aid externally, because companies just don't have the capital. The way they are reacting now, right now, it's actually a war, emergency, pandemic situation right now. So companies are waiting. March salaries have got paid because people have not stopped that. But April is going to be a very different story. So there are 3 phases where they are working on. One is the current phase, which is the lockdown phase. Don't know if it on April 14th it will get extended or it will get gradually done. That's one phase. Second phase is return to normalcy phase, where from a lockdown you are going towards normalcy. There the actions have to be very different. It has to have reducing the burn, conserving cash, conserving expenses. The third phase and the final phase is the post-lockdown normalcy phase, where people are skeptical whether the normal will be new normal. There are industries like travel and hospitality that will take long time before new normal comes. Some of this because of remote working, some of this online grocery, online delivery, brick and mortar restaurant, all these are going to take a fundamental hit and the new normal will be worse than what the original normal was. So right now we are all struggling with the first phase and looking at the second phase. Third phase we are not even prepared to handle. That's the summary of the situation here. Unfortunately, people who are fringe players, people who are weak players, people who had less cash, very high leverage debt, and are getting the most affected by this. Some of them are sitting pretty with a large cash balance, either raised from investors or from the cash flows or this. They have a lot more room. So you will see consolidation. You will see a lot of fringe players just shutting down because they cannot handle the first phase or second phase. Forget about the third phase.
Yeah. No, so we are seeing the domino effect already in various sectors. You're seeing, companies evoke a force majeure or, unusual circumstances and saying that they're not going to pay their vendors or their business partners. This is going to lead to more pay cuts and possibly job losses. Manish Sabharwal is with us now and perhaps the best voice really on this subject today. Manish, K Ganesh, in case you didn't hear him, just said that March salaries have come. April looks dismal, looks tough. and I'm talking about formal employees here, what is the extent of hit that you foresee?
I think it's unmodelable. I think we shouldn't really decide what to do before April 4, before the lockdown is lifted. If the lockdown isn't lifted on April 14th, companies will have to move to one level of sort of intervention. If the lockdown lasts beyond May 1st, this or May 15th, this moves from the realm of commercial solutions to policy. I mean, companies can't do deficit financing. Modern corporations are not ponds, we are rivers. It's about flow, it's not about stock. So I would submit that it's unmodelable right now. Everything you do to murder the virus is murdering the economy. That is the right sequence. I mean, we have to first deal with the virus, then we have to deal with poor citizens, then we have to deal with employers, and then we have to deal with the financial system. So I think it's frankly unmodelable. We are in uncharted territory, and obviously the fiscal deficit will have to take a toss right now. We've already had some monetary intervention. So I would say till 14th April, we really have to be clear that we have to keep track of what are next steps and only then decide. I think companies taking decisions before 14th April may be premature. If it's lifted on 14th April, life will go back to normal. There will be a small spike in wages, but otherwise things will go back to normal.
Mr. Sabharwal, what is your assessment on which sectors are most vulnerable, even after April 14th, or if the lockdown is extended, or even 6 months down the line? It seems glaringly obvious that certain sectors are going to perhaps be grievously wounded. Your aviation, travel, tourism, hospitality. Are we already seeing that impact going? What is sort of your assessment of what happens next in terms of sectoral hit?
I mean, I think the obvious ones are obvious. You listed them. It's going to take a while for there will be a new normal in hospitality and travel and tourism. But I think these things are hard to model. I mean, the first input into a GPS is not where you're going, it's where you are. And we don't know where you are. So I think that companies which were diversified, companies which were highly leveraged, companies, there will also be firm specific winners. I mean, if the kind of demand destruction which has happened in the lockdown, there will be people who had cash and who had designed themselves for resilience. See, I think in the last 5-10 years, companies had only focused on performance and focused on growth, but resilience is always an important objective which this virus has reminded us. So I think every crisis offers opportunities to people. It's early to say which sectors or which companies those will be. But I think this crisis has exposed some of the weaknesses in human capital in the Indian state. So, civil service reform, labor reform, financial reform, university distance education reform. UGC has banned, higher education learning. So I think that there will be a flurry of policy and there will be a flurry of corporates who will take advantage of this crisis to cement their positions or to be seen as employers who were honorable and had a good employer brand and treated their employees honorably. So I wouldn't, there are never only winners or only losers in a crisis like this. If this lasts 2 months, then of course it shifts from commercial possibilities to the realm of policy. But if it gets over by 15th April or 1st May, there will be a number of companies who will come out stronger. In these crises, the strong get stronger and the weak get weaker.
Mr. Sanyal, how do you look at the situation panning out? I mean, most people are saying and forecasting that the informal labor, the gig economy worker, those who don't have formal contracts, will very quickly start feeling the pinch. As companies figure out what to do next. For the rest, there may be, of course, cuts in pay and job losses as well. What is the cascading effect of this? Because this is going to lead to a depression in consumer demand, which was already an existing issue we had before COVID-19 hit.
To a great extent, it's absolutely true. If you see at this moment, consumer confidence in general, for a pretty long period of time, consumer confidence, as per the latest RBI surveys, had been pretty subdued. I'm pretty sure the next round, as and when it comes out a couple of months down the line, it will be taking a very, very significant hit. And it might actually take a pretty long time to recover. So as such, from a business point of view, the hits might be at different pockets in multiple directions to a very significant extent. Now, what is very interesting, and some of my co-panelists have already highlighted that, this is a very, very clearly a big crisis time, uncharted territory we are in, and most probably we'll be seeing a situation where the strong will come out stronger, and the weak will be possibly facing the hit in a very bad way. But what I want to highlight, that the reaction to some of the industries in different phases, that one particular phase is the lockdown phase, and the other phase is when gradually activities start coming back to normalcy or reach normalcy, the reaction to various industries can be very, very different. For example, you very clearly mentioned that the vulnerability of the unorganized sectors, small sectors, tiny sectors. My sense is that that's absolutely true in the lockdown phase. When the lockdown phase gets lifted and business start coming back to normalcy, some of the unorganized sectors and the stronger player in the unorganized sector, there is a possibility, I'm mentioning there is a possibility that some of them might actually adjust to the new normal much faster. First of all, the bigger companies, let me put it this way, the bigger companies cater to a much larger geography, pan-India, international. A lot of their inputs are imported. Compare that with some of the smaller businesses which cater to basic needs of the society and of the economy. They possibly cater to one particular district, two particular districts, one particular states. Some of them might actually adjust to the new normal at a faster pace. So it sounds counterintuitive at this juncture, and they will be really tested during the period of lockdown. But even in the unorganized sector, people who survived this lockdown period might actually come back to normalcy a bit faster than some of its peers in the more formal and the bigger industries.
Yes. No, absolutely. So, who do you think is the most vulnerable section of, workers right now, Mr. Sanyal? Is it, your sort of middle management in your tourism, aviation, in sectors which work on discretionary spends? Obviously, companies are also realizing that there is a different way of working, as many have adapted to a lockdown kind of ecosystem or technology, etc. What do you see of the fallout of this on employability?
Absolutely. I think the big question here is which segment of employees are vulnerable even in the lockdown phase as well as in the new normal as and when we achieve that. Now, as you have rightly pointed out, kind of to some extent obvious, if we are talking about a situation, for example, tourism, hospitality, etc., which is taking a big hit at this moment and will possibly take a significant hit over the course of the next several months or several quarters, there the quotient of vulnerability is possibly pretty high. In case, if we are talking about some of the industries which are possibly export-oriented of discretionary items, there the degree of vulnerability can be pretty high. Or, for example, if someone is dependent very significantly on global mobility, etc., there the vulnerability can be very high. So I try to see things in that who are the people who are more vulnerable in both the two phases, during the lockdown phase as well as and when we achieve the new normal over the course of the next few months and potentially next few quarters. In that kind of a scenario, if certain segment is more vulnerable in both the segments, very clearly the risks are very high in that particular segment.
Mr. Ganesh, how do you look at companies really dealing with this situation? Obviously, the support or wage support is not forthcoming as of now. It may take some time. It may not even be the top priority. for the government looking at the other massive challenges? Should it be a bigger priority right now, and what could be the far-reaching effects of sort of a pay cut, job loss kind of situation spreading from sector to sector?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm an interested party, so I think this should be a top priority. The government has done absolutely the right thing by acting swiftly for lockdown and containing the virus and the effects of pandemic. Also, the relaxations and announced by RBI and some sort of relief measure that has come. I am hoping that it's only the first step from the government. There are other segments and sectors not addressed. SME, MSME, corporate, startup sector has not been addressed. I am waiting any day for relief for those sectors. So I hope it is definitely a priority and it is coming on the way. In terms of what the companies are doing, I think it was earlier mentioned, we are trying to see how to conserve the cash, how to prepare for this. I don't think the lockdown is going to end 100% on 14th. I disagree to that extent from what was mentioned earlier. Even when it's lifted, it will be a slow, gradual return to normalcy. For example, you're not going to see on April 15th that social distancing is removed and all transport is allowed. So even if work from home is curtailed, I'm sure people will insist that in the office you maintain social distance. You cannot travel by bus with social distancing. You cannot travel by Ola or Uber. So those are going to get affected. Transport is going to be a big tough thing. In the office, in order to maintain social distance, only 50% can work from home. All this I'm talking about even if April 14 the lockdown is completely lifted. So the normalcy is not going to happen on April 15. There's going to be a long period of return to normalcy. I don't know whether it's 2 months, 3 months, 6 months or 9 months, but that's going to seriously affect. So what we are doing now, the companies are doing and startups are doing is, one, look at the cash, see what is discretionary spend, how much can you stretch it. We have told our landlords that one is some of the state governments have said moratorium and all that stuff, irrespective of what they have said, irrespective of whether a force majeure clause is there in the rental agreement or not, please take our deposit, adjust against our deposit. We do not have money to pay the rent. Okay, right? If you want to throw us out, that's a different matter, but right now we cannot pay. So that is very, very clear. Similarly, we are requesting the government saying that cash crunch, working capital crunch is the single biggest problem. If you ask me two problems, one is the drying up of cash because the payments are not coming in and the payouts have to go out, and the job cuts and job losses for people. These are two. So government can do a lot by soft loans, by working capital credit, without insisting on collateral or without insisting on personal guarantee, trying to do soft loans. So there needs to be some package to ease the cash pressure, working capital pressure on the system. Otherwise, you will see a huge impact on startup and SMEs as MSMEs, which are already on the brink. They all fly pretty close to the sun because that's how tough and competitive the business is. So postponing that, definitely no question of new hires, new expansion. We have all frozen till the time, like Manish said, clarity emerges and from this current situation where we can't even model. New hires we are not doing. And you asked about which the layers of management will get severely affected. We will still need front-end people to do the job, but can we afford to have layers of management? That will go away. Companies that have recruited for growth and scale during 2020, when we were finishing 2019 entering, all of them will scale back, which means job losses in a lot of cases. And what they call as furlough, asking people to take 3 months leave without payoff so that we can evaluate when the new normal comes. Okay, right? So pay cut, percentage of pay, take a furlough, postponement of expenses, asking for higher credit period, and squeezing the payables and trying to chase up the receivables. I think all of that to be done. But I do hope from the government side, we do get some relief, at least for working capital, for cash flow to be able to do. I don't think government can do equity or a bailout like has been done with some, in case of some banks, or in the US, the government did bailout of companies. I don't expect that to happen. But definitely need intervention. Otherwise we are dead. I'm hoping that as we speak, maybe tomorrow a press conference will come from the finance minister and we'll listen to good.
Well, I feel your pain, Mr. Ganesh, and I thank you for speaking so, honestly about the situation, because if startups are figuring out how to pay rent, we're definitely in deep trouble. Mr. Sabharwal, I want you to speak now from the perspective of the employee. Many people who are watching this program right now, some may be business owners, and many may be salaried employees who are wondering how they can prepare, if at all, or what this means for them, or how they can survive this phase. What would be your message for them?
I mean, I think it's, again, like without employers, there are no employees. So it's really hard to model even for employees what to do. And this work from home experiment has provided continuity. Time will tell whether it provides productivity, right? Andrew Carnegie was once asked, how many employees do you have in your how many employees work in your company? And he said about half. Many people are realizing after 10 days of the lockdown that there is a class divide. 70% of our graduates can work from home, but only 10% of our non-graduates can work from home. So if you use your mind, you can work from home, but if you use your hands and legs, it's hard for you to work from home. So I think that where you stand on this issue will depend on where you sit. If you haven't kept up with sort of lifelong learning, if you haven't sort of retooled yourself, this is a great time for employees to sort of hit e-learning in ways that are usually not possible in the frenzy of agitated activity. It's also time to think about resilience within your own portfolio of skills, resilience for your employer, resilience for your sector. So I think that I don't think people should be making jerky decisions right now. If it's 15th April, we'll get away with the bruised knee. If it's 1st May, we'll get away with the broken leg. But if it goes ahead longer than that, then as I said, it moves to the realm of possibility of policy intervening. But I would sort of caution that there's many expectations from the government. This is not a liquidity crisis. This is a solvency crisis. Liquidity crises can be dealt very differently and have been dealt with monetary policy, interest rates, regulatory forbearance, and some sort of liquidity for financial institutions. But this is a solvency crisis. So liquidity never solves a solvency crisis. And we are again in new territory at least for the Indian state, who has never sort of dealt with the solvency crisis in the non-financial services sector. So I think that once we have a fix on when the lockdown is being lifted, or whether it's a partial lockdown, or whether it's being extended, the level of fiscal escalation will be important. I mean, European and American companies have been promised about $8 trillion, which is about 2 years of profits if you think about them. And I don't think India can afford that calibration, right? New York can't handle being New York, and it has a per capita income of $93,000. India's per capita of 2,000 should. So concepts like universal basic income are currently unaffordable, but they're not unimaginable to do direct benefit transfer to the poorest citizens. So let's not expect magic in terms of liquidity solutions won't solve a solvency problem.
Okay, I just, want to pick up on a point you made, Mr. Sabharwal, and I found that very interesting, about how work from home will actually change the paradigm. Do you think in a lot of companies, at least partial work from home and remote location will become the new normal?
I think that we're running a randomized control trial of a kind that could have never happened before. So I think some companies will, but will it substitute work from office? I don't think so. Will it blunt commercial real estate? I don't think so. But yeah, I think companies are discovering that there are 5, 10, 15% of their people who really are productive at home. I think that, we are right now in the phase where companies wanted continuity, and that has been provided. But productivity, time will tell whether it can be delivered on work from home. So I'm not sure that everybody will be willing to say that, look, 20, 30% of my workforce can work from home. What this crisis does make companies realize is they need to variabilize their labor costs. We've always thought of labor costs as fixed, and, so having your people supply chain, having concentric circles with different locations, with different outputs, with different ways of being paid. Crises don't create new trends, they accelerate existing ones. The deconstruction of organizations, e-learning, are existing trends which have been brought forward 10 years.
Absolutely. It's a huge learning curve for all of us. Even I think 2 weeks ago, we would have never imagined that an anchor could be sitting in her living room and broadcasting a show. But well, we're doing it right now. We're figuring out new ways to keep the ship running. And we'll have to wait and see what this stage of uncertainty brings us. I want to thank all of you for joining us on the show this evening. We'll take a very short break right here, but we'll be back with a lot more.